If you are looking for organization motivation, look no further as I organize our pantry that feeds our 4 growing boys. Having boys is such a blessing despite the constant eating and causing my pantry to go awry. But while I organize my pantry, I'm going to share 13 ways to make being a boy mom a little less crazy. And be sure to stick around to the end because I am saving the most life-changing tip for last. I'm going to start off with a very practical one. Get them out of the house every single day. It doesn't have to be a crazy outing in a crowded place. You can take them to the drive-up ATM, do a quick Target run, a Walmart pickup, taking them to the park, visiting a friend, going to the library, anything. You just want to get them off your property at least once a day. I try to keep the stakes really low for these kind of outings. That way, if things aren't going well, we can easily turn around and go home. But I have found that the more I take my kids out in public, the better they behave out in public. So I try to just make that a part of our day. But I also try to get them outside as much as possible. I don't know why, but parenting is just so much easier outside. There is something about getting them and yourself out in the fresh air that just changes the day. We personally are trying to do the 1,000-hour outside challenge, but honestly, since we started it, I realized hitting the 1,000 hours isn't what's important. What's important is prioritizing being outside every single day. Boys need to move their body. They need exercise. Now, the good news is if you're already taking them outside, you've got that covered. But on bad weather days, like when it's 110 degrees here, I have to prioritize activity in the home. We typically have a no running and no roughhousing rule inside, but if the weather's bad, I have to lower that standard and give them activities to keep them moving. But when the weather is nice and I'm noticing a lot of hard days, I find a nice family bike ride can just reset everyone's moods. One of my boys is particularly active, and my cousin told me one day that he's a workhorse. You need to give him a task that involves his entire body. And she was so right, which brings me to embrace their help. If they are active kids, adopt the workhorse mentality. It really makes a difference. But even if they're more mellow, embrace their help at home. Things don't have to be perfect. Let go of your perfectionism and let them help with the cleaning, cooking, laundry, or even caring for little siblings, with supervision, of course. But teach them how to help. Embrace their little helper spirit. And if they are a child who needs a little bit more physical activity than others, don't be afraid to give them some physically challenging, but also age-appropriate heavy lifting tasks. It gives them a sense of accomplishment and a sense of purpose while keeping their body moving and getting their energy out. Getting them moving and helping is important, but so is slowing down and knowing how to relax. So I also like to take time to read to my boys. Boys can be running 100 miles a minute, both physically and mentally. But I found that they also need to learn to let their bodies and their minds just slow down from time to time. And what better way to do that than reading a book together? Sometimes when I feel like everything is chaotic, I just try saying, okay, go pick out a book to read. And it can be a really great way to transition from playtime to calm time. Yes, I am going to say this over and over. Boys need that energy outlet, but they also need to learn when to be calm. And reading is just such a great, engaging way to teach them that balance in life. I know it can be easy when we just need them to be calm to put on a movie, but I found that it's actually better for them when we cut down on screens. Now, please understand, I have been everywhere on the screen time spectrum. We have been 0 screens, not even a TV in the living room, all the way to Mickey Mouse is our live-in babysitter. But if I'm being honest, I have found that it is easier in the big picture when we limit it. That's not to say that there aren't going to be seasons where you find yourself relying on a TV or a tablet, and I am seriously not judging. I've been there. I've been in those seasons. But when I'm able to cut back, things just get better. Our screen time rules are constantly changing to meet our family's needs and what works for us in any given season. But I found that when we are relying less on screens, the boys' imaginations just take off and they're just a lot better behaved. Not perfect, but better. But I will say that no matter how much screen time you do, just be very intentional to have it be part of your routine. When I was at those stages where I had to use the TV as a pacifier for my older children just to calm them down, that's when things got really bad. But if they know when to expect TV or tablets and then know when the screen time ends, it's just not as big of a deal to them. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. So, for example, our older boys know that when the twins go to bed, the rest of us stay up and watch an episode of our favorite show together before they go to bed. And there's just not a huge fight for the TV at other times during the day. They know that that's when we get TV, and the routine is just solid, which is why routines are everything. Schedules are not. Schedules annoy me. I love when my babies get down to one nap because I can throw the schedules and the wake windows out the window and just stick to a routine. We love having a flow to our day. What we do and the order we do it, it just simplifies the days and the boys know what to expect. They just know when we leave the house, when we go outside to play, when we watch TV, when we go to bed. But I have to tell you, keep bedtime simple. I am all for routines, but don't drag out nap or bedtime routines. This is so freeing. We used to have elaborate, long routines for our first child. Now it's just doing what they physically need to do, like going to the bathroom, brushing teeth, putting on pajamas, that kind of thing, saying their prayers, and going to sleep. Because at the end of the long day, we as parents don't necessarily have the energy for the long, drawn out routines. It's so much better to keep things simple and not let bedtime become a stressful time. We want them to sleep well, and that doesn't happen if everyone's stressed going to bed because the routine is just so long that it's stressing everybody out. So we just tried to eliminate that stress. I've also been trying to eliminate stress by telling myself it's no big deal. In all honesty, I am talking to myself here on this next part as much as I'm talking to you. But this is a saying that I've been trying really hard to just tell myself over and over. I've just started, and to be honest, I still forget to do it a lot. But I've just started taking a moment to say this little mantra to myself and to my kids. For some reason, everything can feel like a big deal. You're already running late to church. You can't find everyone's shoes. The living room is a mess. The sink is full of dishes. Everyone's screaming. It can be a lot. It can be so overwhelming and can feel like the world is crashing down. But I try to catch myself in those moments and remind my nervous system it's not a big deal. When I give myself that verbal reminder, I just feel my stress lowering. So that's something I'm working on, is just to constantly remind myself it's not a big deal. But let's be honest, sometimes that cute little mantra doesn't work. Sometimes things are a big deal. Sometimes the stress doesn't go away. And sometimes we just have bad days. I try to remind myself in those moments that it's okay to embrace the hard days. There's a popular book being talked about in Christian circles right now titled Hard is Not the Same Thing as Bad. I'm currently reading the book, so I can't give my opinion on it, but I have to say I absolutely love that title. It is so true. Life is going to be hard no matter what you do. But isn't having children such a great challenge? Of course, it's difficult, but it is so rewarding. And I would still have hard days or bad days if I didn't have kids. I would still have hard days if they went to public school or daycare. I'd still have hard days if I had all girls. I would still have hard days in my life no matter what. But what a blessing it is that these are my challenges. I look back and I prayed for these hard days. Heck, I even prayed for these bad days. Which I'm so glad that I'm writing and recording this today, because today has been a pretty bad day. We crossed the bridge from being a hard day to a bad day. But after a day full of stress and anger and tears, I just am so thankful for these kids. I'm thankful that these are the challenges I face in my life. I'm thankful that as I am writing this sentence, my 6-year-old interrupted me just to tell me he loves me. I would rather take every day like today, as hard as it was, and even, dare I say, as bad as it was, than miss out on the joy that my children bring me. Children are such a joy and a blessing. I am so glad that I have surrounded myself with women and now only follow accounts that also see children that way. When I had my first child, I was surrounded by a circle of women who tried to pull me down to this level of resentment towards their children. It was so isolating trying to focus on the joy of my child when they were just being mean and belittling of their children behind their backs. But as I had more children and as my children got older, I found it easier to fall into those conversations and follow those accounts. And it really just overflowed into my attitude towards them. So I just don't surround myself with those kind of ideas anymore. And since separating myself from that narrative, I see such amazing things in all my kids. I really enjoy them more, even though they can still keep me humble, drive me crazy, or just be a lot. But I truly see them as a blessing even on the hard days like today. Before I say the last couple of things, I do want to introduce myself. My name is Dee. I am some lady sharing tips, encouragement, and ideas for stay at home moms while I clean and organize my home. So, if you want to have conversations about things that matter to moms while we tackle the household tasks, I'd love it if you hit subscribe. Another very tangible thing I've done to make raising boys easier is I follow through the first time. This can be hard. It was especially hard for me having to take care of twins and then try to follow through right away with my older boys. But I do my absolute best to not give warnings anymore. I tell my kids something once and immediately take action. Now, this is way easier said than done. I found that this eliminates a bunch of boundary pushing. I know it's common sense, but when you have a bunch of little boys, it is surprisingly easy to just get away from doing it. So I try to be intentional about doing this. When they listen the first time, there's just less yelling and less tears. As promised, I did save the best for last. This last thing is the most life-changing thing I've done when it comes to raising our boys. And that is I cut out dyes from their diet. If you want to hear the story about why this was so life-changing, how we discovered it, and how you can maybe consider doing it too, I encourage you to watch this video. And thank you so much for hanging out with some lady on YouTube.